You've got 24 hours to tear down that monstrosity, or we're calling the sheriff. That's what the HOA president shouted right before I dropped a truth bomb that would wreck her entire life. It was day 3 of building my dream cabin when she came storming onto my property, clipboard in hand and attitude to match. Victoria Ashworth, queen of the Pine Valley HOA, barking orders to stop construction because it supposedly broke community rules. The sharp tang of fresh-cut pine mixed with her overpowering perfume as the gravel crunched under the tires of SUVs. Filled with fuming neighbors, she was flashing legal documents, threatening massive fines like she was judge and jury. But she had no clue I held the kind of information that would flip this whole battle on its head. Stuff that would turn her threats into the costliest mistake of her life. But before I explain how one phone call dismantled an entire HOA legally, drop a comment. What would you do if someone tried to steal your land? And tell me where you're tuning in from. HOA nightmares have a funny way of bringing people together. So let me rewind and show you how this madness started. I'm Marcus Brennan, 45, an electrician freshly divorced, who inherited 5 acres of rugged Colorado mountain land from my eccentric Uncle Silas. After months of legal red tape and cramped city living, the land felt like a lifeline, a shot at something real. Maybe a chance to show my teenage daughter, Emma, that her old man wasn't a total failure. Uncle Silas had always been a bit of an enigma. Vanished into the woods in 1980, only resurfacing around Christmas smelling like wood smoke and diesel. He'd muttered that the land held more secrets than trees. Most of the family just called him crazy, but when his lawyer called to say I'd inherited his property, I figured maybe he knew something we didn't. The place was stunning. A creek babbled over stones, hawks cried from the cliffs, and the scent of pine and wild sage hung in the air like nature's cologne. Silas had laid a concrete foundation and built a workshop that looked like something out of a frontier museum. Breathing in that crisp air, clean and free of city exhaust, I felt something I hadn't in months: hope. I emptied my 401k, left my job, and started putting together a simple log cabin. Nothing fancy, just a home my daughter could visit on weekends, see her dad building instead of falling apart. There was a rhythm to it. Hammering nails, sawing timber, it was like therapy after the chaos of courtrooms and paperwork. But on the 3rd day, she showed up. Victoria Ashworth stepped out of a spotless white BMW X5 like some corporate angel of doom. Mid-50s, sharp business casual, gripping a leather portfolio like it was a weapon. Her heels clicked on the rocky ground like a metronome of menace, and her floral perfume fought the mountain air in a full-scale assault on my sinuses. "Excuse me," she snapped, crossing my land like she owned it. "Are you the party responsible for this unauthorized structure?" I put down my saw, catching how she said party like it was beneath her. "Marcus Brennan, I'm building a cabin on land I inherited." "And you're Victoria Ashworth, president of the Pine Valley Homeowners Association." She riffled through her papers with theatrical flair. "This structure violates numerous community codes. No permits, no architectural review, no environmental checks. Honestly, this whole rustic mess is a threat to our property values." I glanced out over miles of untouched forest. "What community?" "I don't see a single house." She handed over some official-looking forms. "Pine Valley HOA oversees all residential property in this zone. Your uncle agreed to these terms when the HOA was established 6 months ago. You inherited his obligations. 6 months. Silas passed away 8 months ago." Then she slapped me with a cease and desist and a $2,500 fine for alleged violations. "All construction materials must be removed within 48 hours, she declared. "Daily fines start at $500 and double every week. We take our standards seriously." But then came the real message. "Let's be honest, Mr. Brennan." Her gaze drifted over my work clothes, dusty truck, and calloused hands. "This isn't the kind of neighborhood where people like you usually thrive. We value a certain quality in our residents. I'd hate for your daughter to feel ashamed because of unpleasantness." Hearing Emma's name hit me hard. She'd done her homework. She knew about the divorce, my finances, my kid. "Are you threatening my family?" I asked, voice icy. Victoria smiled with the chill of a January wind. "Just giving some friendly advice. Some fights aren't worth the cost, especially when you're outmatched." She got into her BMW but paused before leaving. 48 hours, Mr. Brennan. Don't make this uglier than it has to be. As her car disappeared down the mountain, I remembered what Silas had once told me. Never let anyone shove you around. I looked at the stop work order ... then back at my unfinished cabin. Victoria Ashworth thought she was in control. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. She didn't even wait the full 2 days. Next morning, she returned with a so-called lawyer in tow, radiating smugness like it was perfumed. Behind her SUV, a battered Honda Civic rolled up. Out climbed the worst excuse for legal representation I'd ever seen. Douglas Cranky looked like he borrowed his suit from a thrift shop window display. Nervous sweat clung to him like smoke. "You're being served, Mr. Brennan," Victoria declared. "Cease construction. Prepare for serious penalties." Cranky fumbled through a stack of papers. Per HOA rules, you now owe $15,000 in fines. Also, your property transfer lacked required HOA disclosures, so your ownership is disputable. Double quotes 15 grand. For building on land I inherited, their stench, cheap cologne, anxiety, and intimidation hung thick in the air. "I'll run this past my lawyer," I said coolly. Victoria's laugh was ice on glass. "Come on, Mr. Brennan, let's not pretend. You can afford one." The second they left, I drove straight to the courthouse. Betty, the clerk, helped me dig through the records. The hum of fluorescent lights and scent of aging paper gave the whole thing a detective noir feel. What we uncovered lit a fire in me. The Pine Valley HOA had formed 2 months after Uncle Silas died. The land map, drawn like a sniper target around my 5 acres land that made up 60% of the HOA's total area. Betty leaned in, whispering, "Looks like someone built this whole thing just to trap your uncle's land." Digging deeper, every HOA member was either Victoria's family or worked for her husband's construction business. This wasn't a community. It was a cartel with clipboards, and dead men can't sign contracts. I called Sarah Kim, a sharp-as-nails real estate lawyer. Her office smelled like espresso and confidence. "This won't stand," she said, flipping through the documents. "They can't bind someone to an agreement formed after they're dead. And they definitely can't impose it on you without your consent." Sarah was fired up. "We're filing back harassment, fraud, emotional distress, plus a full investigation into how they redrew property lines post-transfer." But Victoria escalated. She called a community meeting without telling me. My neighbor Jake went and filled me in later over a cold beer on the porch. "She's got everyone scared," he said, "telling them you've got a criminal record." Total lies, but they're eating it up. Then came the smear campaign online. Victoria set up a Pine Valley Safety Facebook group, posting my photo from an old union newsletter with captions warning about dangerous transients. The comments, pure venom, but her arrogance became her undoing. To prove they had money to fight me, she posted HOA financial records. The numbers were shocking: over $847,000 raised from just 12 homes in 6 months. That's more than $70,000 per family, with no visible projects or amenities. Sarah almost spit out her coffee. "She just gave us everything we need to take this federal." The next morning, it got worse. A county inspector rolled up and handed me a citation. Multiple violations. Construction halted. "Sorry, man," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Orders from the top. Victoria had crossed the line into using public resources for private revenge. That opened the door to federal investigations, not just into fraud, but abuse of government power. She thought she was winning some elegant chess match. She had no idea I was about to flip the whole board. At 3 a.m., I woke to glass shattering and the stench of diesel. My construction site was trashed, lumber smashed, generator leaking fuel, nails strewn across the road like a trap. My truck tires were all slashed. An anonymous EPA complaint hit my inbox claiming I was harming protected wetlands, a seasonal stream that's been here since before Victoria was born. By noon, strange cars lined up across my driveway, not blocking it completely, just enough to be obnoxious. Drivers claimed they were just exercising their right to park on public roads. Then came the fake signs. Hazmat warnings, authorized personnel only. They looked real enough to spook my contractor Pete. "Marcus, people think your site's toxic. I'm getting nervous clients," he said. Victoria had turned my own community connections against me, but desperation leaves a trail. Sarah and I went back to the courthouse and uncovered the truth. Mountain Vista Resorts had approached the county. 6 months ago with a $50 million resort plan, and they needed my land as the scenic centerpiece. Resort views, luxury spa access, helipad proximity, it all hinged on owning my 5 acres. My property wasn't just inconvenient, it was the final piece they couldn't build without. It was the master key to her vault of secrets. Check out this consulting fee, Betty murmured, her finger tracing a buried line in the county planning records. Mountain Vista shelled out $400,000 for something called community relations consulting. Sarah's coffee stopped midair, inches from her lips. That's not consulting, she muttered. That's a bribe with a LinkedIn profile. Suddenly, Victoria's frantic push for deadlines made sense. She wasn't just hounding us for HOA dues, she was raking in a fortune for handing over my land to resort developers. Every day I resisted cost her 6 figures in potential profits. That night, I put my electrician background to work and installed a full-scale surveillance system, motion detectors, night vision cameras, the whole 9 yards. If Victoria planned to take things criminal, I'd be ready for the high-def highlight reel. I didn't have to wait long. Just after midnight, a pickup rolled down my private access road, lights off, engine idling low enough to be mistaken for the wind. The driver, hoodie pulled up but unable to mask that familiar jawline, started splashing liquid from a gas can near my lumber stack. My cameras caught it all, frame by frame, including the moment he looked straight into the lens, eyes wide like a stunned deer. Tommy Ashworth, Victoria's son, early 20s. Apparently inherited his mom's flair for felony-level dumb decisions. The next morning, I launched my counterattack. I walked into the sheriff's department with USB drives full of footage, Tommy's midnight firestarter stunt, complete with facial match and plate number. Victoria's wholesome citizen act collapsed faster than Tommy's excuse during questioning. But I wasn't done digging. The HOA's public documents were a goldmine of shady financial dealings, security consultant checks written to ghost companies, landscaping invoices paid to Victoria's Florida-based brother-in-law, and legal research costs that could fund a full Supreme Court docket. She had been siphoning off HOA funds for years, all while setting herself up for the resort payday, double-dipping, bleeding the community dry now, planning to cash out later. As I watched the arson footage for the 5th time that evening, with the mountain air thick with pine and the scent of oncoming rain, it hit me. Victoria wasn't just greedy, she was cornered. That resort deal likely had deadlines. My refusal to sell meant every day risked everything for her. And when predators feel trapped, they lash out desperate and stupid. Victoria's retaliation came fast, vicious, and completely off the rails. The following morning, a process server was on my porch with an emergency court order. Victoria was accusing me of building an illegal commercial structure and demanded the court force me to tear it down immediately. According to the documents, I was allegedly planning to run a transient housing project for undesirables that would degrade the community's moral fiber. The scent of pine mingled with the ink of fresh legal filings as I flipped through 15 pages of pure fiction. Victoria wanted $100,000 for community damages and a restraining order preventing me from setting foot on my own land. But that was just her opening move. By noon, a swarm of 3 county inspectors descended on my property, environmental, structural, septic, all issuing citations for violations that didn't exist. The lead inspector, Rodriguez, whispered apologies as he snapped pictures of my completely legal wiring. "Sorry, man," he muttered. "This came from way above me. Somebody's dropping serious money to make your life miserable." Corruption hung in the air, thicker than the mountain fog. I'd been through a brutal divorce. I knew this tactic well. When intimidation fails, they turn to bureaucracy. Death by 1,000 inspections, compliance traps, endless red tape. But Victoria still had one last low blow to deliver. That afternoon, my ex-wife Linda called, her voice trembling with fury. "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" Emma's friends showed her a Facebook post saying you're a sex offender. She's locked in her room crying, asking if her dad's a monster. I went cold. "What post?" "Some community safety group," she said, voice cracking. "Your picture, warnings about predators near kids." It's total garbage, but now Emma's friends are acting like she's radioactive. She asked if it's safe to visit you. The thought of my 15-year-old reading that filth, her peers whispering behind her back, made my vision blur with rage. Victoria had crossed the one boundary that truly mattered, using my daughter as a weapon. "It's all lies, Linda. I'm dealing with a corrupt HOA trying to take my land. Fix this, she snapped. Judges take social media slander seriously when it harms kids. This could affect your custody. After she hung up, I sat in Uncle Silas's old workshop, surrounded by oil stains and sawdust, 40 years of family history pressing down like weight. This wasn't about land anymore. Victoria was trying to rip apart the only relationship that mattered, but in her panic, she'd created my opening. That evening, Jake from next door knocked with urgent news. Marcus, Victoria's crew posted. Another alert, they're claiming you threatened to torch the neighborhood. They used a photo looks like you holding a weapon. It's your circular saw, but they made it look menacing. Comments are a mob scene. Call SWAT. Dangerous. Protect the kids. But Jake leaned closer with the real scoop. 3 HOA families came to me in private. Victoria's threatening to hike their property assessments if they don't sign complaints against you. They're scared of her now, not you. Even better, the HOA treasurer, Beth Morrison, was digging into the finances. She'd been pushing for audits, but Victoria kept stalling. Then Beth found invoices from non-existent companies' payments for work that was never done. She's demanding a full audit, Jake whispered. Victoria's losing it. That was my moment. I called Sarah immediately. The whole financial scheme is unraveling. If we get an emergency audit before she covers her tracks, we've got her. Even better, Sarah said. Falsely labeling someone a sex offender, that's defamation at the federal level. We can press criminal charges, but I wanted to hit Victoria where it hurt the most, her bank account. The next morning, I visited every business her family owned or frequented, carrying screenshots of her defamatory posts. I calmly explained their potential liability if they continued supporting a slander campaign against a local resident. Reputation is everything in a small mountain town. By that afternoon, the Ashworths found themselves suddenly unwelcome at the auto shop, grocery store, and hardware store. The news spread like wildfire. Victoria's own mother called her in a panic, demanding answers about why the entire town was shutting them out. As thunderclouds gathered over the ridgeline and rain tapped on my cabin windows, I could feel the momentum shift. Victoria had stretched herself to thin, attacked to many fronts while her corruption came to light. But I also knew people like her never surrender quietly. They go down swinging. The scent of wet pine reminded me of Uncle Silas's words, the land held secrets. And the next day, I'd finally understand exactly what he meant. While prying up floorboards in his workshop, my crowbar struck something solid. The metallic clang echoed through the room like destiny arriving. Beneath decades of dust and grease, I unearthed a military green steel lockbox, sealed with a combination likely untouched since the Carter years. The scent of time-worn paper hit me like a memory as I cracked it open using Silas's birthday, the day he bought the land. Inside were bulging manila folders, embossed corporate seals that felt as heavy as gold, and enough legal documentation to bury a courthouse. But what made my hands shake was the certificate on top. Brennan Holdings LLC, formed March 15, 1998, sole owner, Silas J. Brennan. Uncle Silas hadn't just owned 5 acres of forested heaven. He'd quietly formed a holding company 27 years ago and used it to pull off the real estate coup of the century. In 2010, when the Pine Valley subdivision developer went bankrupt during the housing crisis, Silas swooped in silently and bought all the defaulted mortgage debt, not the homes, but the ground beneath them. The residents had been faithfully paying their mortgages, believing they owned their lots. Legally, though, they were renters, and the management company collecting those payments. It had been forwarding the money to Brennan Holdings, which explained how a quiet mountain recluse lived so comfortably. I was now holding the deed to an entire neighborhood, 47 homes, including the 12 that formed Victoria's precious HOA, sitting on land that belonged to me. The scent of Silas's pipe tobacco still lingered in the air, mingling with the weight of the truth in my hands. No wonder he kept it secret. Owning people's land without them knowing, that kind of truth fractures communities. But it also meant one more thing, something that made my heart pound. Victoria Ashworth, HOA queen and enforcer, had been collecting fees, threatening neighbors, and issuing fines on land she didn't legally own. Even her house sat on my property, and she was 3 months behind on rent. Legally, I could evict her in 30 days. The bank statements confirmed it. Rent payments, property tax receipts, maintenance expenses all flowing into Brennan Holdings. Uncle Silas had been the ghost landlord of an entire town. And now, I was. The incorporation papers were real, notarized, and sealed by attorneys whose signatures I could verify. And suddenly, the final battle wasn't just about justice, it was about legacy. The property deeds aligned seamlessly with the county's official records. The bank accounts were legitimate, and the financial trail was as transparent as crystal clear spring water. I sat in Uncle Silas's old workshop chair, surrounded by the lingering scent of worn leather and buried truths, clutching documents that handed me more control over Victoria Ashworth than she could have ever imagined. I had the authority to evict every HOA member who had joined in tormenting me. I could sell the entire neighborhood to Mountain Vista Resorts and walk away a millionaire. I could ruin lives the same way Victoria had tried to ruin mine. But Uncle Silas's final words still whispered through the dusty air, "Don't let them push you around." He didn't say retaliate. He didn't say strike back harder. He just said don't be pushed. There is a subtle but vital difference, and in that difference lay the kind of man I was about to become. His secret rested heavily on my shoulders as I laid the incorporation paperwork across Sarah's conference table. The rich scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the weight of our discovery. I wasn't just up against an HOA anymore. I was now the landlord of every person who'd been out to break me. "This is legally airtight," Sarah said, studying the embossed corporate seal under her desk lamp. "Your uncle was thorough. Every form filed correctly, every transaction logged, every statute followed for 27 years. She reached for a legal pad and began outlining strategies like a general planning battle. Plana. Go public immediately as the property owner and negotiate the HOA's termination. Straightforward, clean, and it would permanently remove Victoria from my life. Plan B. Targeted enforcement. Evict only the main instigators, Victoria, her family, a few others, while letting the rest of the neighborhood stay. Plan C. Full-scale exposure. Leak the entire scandal to the media, trigger a federal investigation into HOA corruption, and let the whole place implode. I thought about Emma reading the awful things on Facebook, about neighbors duped by Victoria's deceit, about Uncle Silas choosing to keep his power hidden all these years. What about a fourth option? One that used this leverage to build, not destroy. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Go on, Victoria's been robbing these people while spinning lies about who owns the land. What if we bring the crimes to light, but offer a path forward? Lower rents, a chance at true ownership, turn this toxic HOA into something that actually helps families instead of tearing them apart. While Sarah dove into legal precedents, I rang up my electrician friend Jake to prep the technical side. We drove out to his shop, where the familiar scent of copper wire and soldering fumes reminded me I had talents far beyond legal chess matches. "You're definitely going to want this recorded," Jake said, helping me configure a professional-grade audio system. "When this bomb drops, you'll need every word preserved for protection." Later, back in my truck, I remembered something from my apprenticeship days. The most effective electrical systems aren't the ones that spark the brightest. They deliver just the right charge to get the job done. Too little, nothing happens. Too much, and you burn the whole place down. This moment required precision. That afternoon, I invited Beth Morrison, the HOA treasurer, to a neutral spot, the local diner. The scent of apple pie and open conversation was a welcome change from weeks of legal tension. "I've had doubts about the books for a while," Beth admitted over coffee that tasted like courage in a cup. "Victoria's been avoiding audits, hiking up fees without explanation. This year alone, we've paid over $847,000 in special assessments. I can't trace where the money went." I slid copies of Victoria's phony invoices across the table, invoices from fake companies, unrendered services, consulting fees that would embarrass Congress. Beth's hands trembled as she studied them. "She's been stealing from us and threatening our homes." Then her voice dropped. "But Marcus, even if we bring her down, how do we protect the families who put everything into their homes?" That's when I knew Plan D was the right path. Over the next 48 hours, Sarah and I built a presentation that served a dual purpose. It exposed Victoria's crimes, but also offered a future rooted in both justice and empathy. Legal paperwork was drafted in triplicate, securely stored, and shared with federal investigators specializing in HOA fraud. I also finally reached out to Emma, the first contact since Linda's furious call. Her voice, small and wounded, answered, but I could hear a flicker of hope as I laid out the truth behind Victoria's lies. So you're not actually in trouble? She asked. The stuff online about you being dangerous. That's all fake, completely made up, sweetheart. And soon, everyone will know. But listen, Emma, this is important. When people lie to hurt you, don't respond with more lies. The best weapon is truth, delivered at exactly the right moment. Friday night's community meeting at the Pine Valley Center had been Victoria's idea, a so-called emergency gathering to address the threatening individual in the neighborhood. She had no idea she was about to host her own undoing. That evening, I sat in my newly finished cabin, listening to the creek's gentle murmurs beneath a star-filled sky. I could feel Uncle Silas with me, his legacy humming in the stillness. He'd hidden this secret, waiting for someone who would wield it wisely. Now was that moment. Unlike Victoria's path of destruction, what I was about to reveal would plant the seeds for something better. Victoria's desperation hit a new peak Tuesday morning. I received an emergency court filing, a petition to have me committed for psychiatric evaluation. She'd managed to convince a judge I was a danger to the community, citing supposed signs of severe mental instability and credible threats. The scent of my morning coffee mingled with the surreal air of legal absurdity. As I read the accusations, according to her statement, I'd been stalking neighbors, threatening to torch homes, and spouting delusional conspiracy theories. She even presented witness statements, no doubt fabricated, from HOA members claiming I approached them at night with bizarre rants and threats. It was all fiction, but terrifyingly official. By noon, things escalated. A convoy of pickups appeared at the end of my road, Victoria's so-called citizen patrol, rifles in hand and moral outrage on their sleeves. They weren't technically trespassing, but their message was loud and clear: cross the line and face vigilante justice. The metallic tang of fear filled my mouth as I watched them from my porch through binoculars. They weren't hired security, just scared neighbors tricked into believing I was a genuine threat. Then came Jake's call with worse news. Marcus, Victoria's brother-in-law, is the county sheriff. He's planning to serve that mental health warrant today with a SWAT team. Says you're armed and dangerous. My stomach turned icy. I'd wired homes for guys who'd been swatted over petty arguments. Some of those ended in gunfire and body bags. I knew how quickly things could go wrong, but Victoria's reckless tactics were backfiring. That same afternoon, Emma called again, this time in tears, but not from shame. Dad, kids at school are saying you're a terrorist. That you're going to shoot up the neighborhood. This is insane. How is she allowed to do this? Because when people are desperate, they cross lines they never would have imagined. Her voice hardened. There was fire in it now. What can I do to help? I'm not letting her destroy us with lies. While Victoria was spinning tales about me being unstable, she was also frantically covering her tracks. Sarah's investigator found she'd withdrawn $127,000 in cash from HOA accounts in just 2 weeks, supposedly for legal and security services. Even more telling, she was pressuring HOA members to sign loyalty pledges, vows not to cooperate with external investigators. 3 families had already approached Sarah, frightened but unwilling to go public. Then Victoria's most desperate move backfired spectacularly. The mental health petition required a licensed professional's evaluation. Victoria submitted one, signed by a Dr. Richard Petton, who had, inconveniently, died 6 months earlier. Sarah's paralegal found the death certificate while checking the credentials. Victoria had forged a psychiatric assessment, using stolen letterhead from a dead doctor. That one forgery elevated her case from civil fraud to federal document tampering, a felony with up to 10 years in prison. She's falling apart, Sarah said, reviewing the fake evaluation. This kind of move screams financial panic. That resort deal must have hard deadlines. But Victoria wasn't done yet. Thursday night, she made her most outrageous mistake. With the SWAT plan stalled, turns out judges don't appreciate forged documents. She decided to act herself. Security cameras caught her sneaking onto my property near midnight, holding what looked like accelerant and matches. She intended to start a small fire near my lumber pile, then call emergency services, accusing me of burning evidence. The irony. The woman who'd accused me of arson was literally trying to commit arson to frame me, but my upgraded security system lit up the night like Broadway. Floodlights flared as soon as she crossed the line. Caught red-handed, gas can and flares in full view, captured from 3 camera angles. Her furious shriek echoed across the valley like a banshee wailing defeat. As I watched her flee in her BMW, I realized she'd just handed me the ace. Video proof of her attempting the exact crime she'd accused me of. Tomorrow's meeting would be even more dramatic than expected. And then came Friday morning. I woke to the thunder of helicopter blades and the sharp scent of exhaust. Emergency vehicles lined my road, news vans, deputies, and what looked like half the county's response teams were forming a perimeter. My phone lit up with reporter calls. Sir, how do you respond to claims you're threatening to blow up the community center? Explosives. I stepped onto my porch with a coffee in hand, and immediately, 6 red dots locked onto my chest. Marcus Brennan. Sheriff Davidson's voice boomed through a megaphone. You are surrounded. Come out. With your hands visible, the world went surreal. Victoria had played her final card, labeling me a domestic terrorist preparing for a standoff. Jake's voice buzzed through my phone. Don't move. Victoria told them you're planning to blow up the meeting tonight. She's got pictures of you with suspicious packages and witness statements. The suspicious packages. Bags of concrete mix for my cabin foundation. The witnesses. Probably the same figments behind her fake psych eval. This time around, Victoria misjudged how much leeway the authorities would give her. Sheriff Davidson approached my front steps slowly, his face showing more discomfort than confrontation. Marcus, he began, I know this sounds ridiculous, but federal agents are breathing down our necks over potential terrorist threats. I need your permission to search the property so we can clear this up quickly. Go ahead, Sheriff, I replied, but maybe take a look at the security footage from last night first. I handed him the USB drive that showed Victoria attempting to commit arson in the middle of the night. As the video played, Davidson's face cycled through several shades of disbelief. There, in full view, was our HOA president caught in the act with a canister of accelerant and a box of matches, trying to set fire to the very home she claimed I intended to destroy. Well, he muttered, that's going to seriously damage her credibility. While the bomb squad spent hours confirming that my suspicious materials were just actual concrete mix, Sarah was busy filing emergency motions to have Victoria arrested. Charges included making false reports, attempted arson, and fabricating terrorist threats, federal offenses with long prison sentences. But the media storm had only just begun. By noon, reporters from Denver were pulling up the mountain, lured by news of a supposed standoff involving a domestic terrorist. Victoria, ever eager for the spotlight, cast herself as the brave neighborhood leader standing up to a violent radical. Standing before cameras with flawless makeup and carefully rehearsed emotion, she painted a picture of a serene suburb under siege by a dangerous loner with a vendetta. This man has threatened our children, shattered our peace, and now he's apparently ready to commit mass violence instead of following basic neighborhood rules. She sobbed into the microphones. All we want is to feel safe again. Her delivery deserved an Oscar if the Academy had a category for dramatic fiction, but there was a fatal flaw in her PR stunt. In her desperation to appear noble, Victoria agreed to several live interviews without any legal counsel. And the thing about Live TV, there's no cutting room floor to save you from inconvenient facts. Channel 7's investigative journalist, Maria Santos, had done her prep. During what Victoria assumed would be a friendly interview, Maria casually dropped a bombshell. Mrs. Ashworth, public records show your association collected roughly $850,000 in special assessments this year. Can you account for how that money was used? Victoria's confident mask wavered. Well, we've faced significant legal expenses dealing with this threat, she replied, but your public financials list only $23,000 in legal costs. Where did the remaining $827,000 go? The silence on air lasted 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity in real time. Victoria's lips opened and closed like a fish struggling for air, her mind scrambling for a response that wouldn't dig the hole deeper. That single quotes s. That's confidential HOA business, she stammered. Confidential. Maria pressed. You're on live TV accusing your neighbor of terrorism. Surely financial transparency is relevant to your credibility. By that evening, the narrative had flipped. No longer was it lone extremist threatens peaceful neighborhood. Now it was HOA president under fire for financial fraud and false terrorism allegations. Social media lit up with speculation. About Victoria's shady bookkeeping and suspiciously timed accusations. As the last of the news vans disappeared down the winding road, leaving only tire marks and diesel fumes, I knew Victoria had just ruined her career in real time. Tonight's HOA meeting wouldn't revolve around her wild accusations about me. Instead, it would be about her explaining to an angry crowd where all their money went. The hunted had just become the hunter. The Pine Valley Community Center had never seen such a turnout. 80-9 people crammed into a space meant for maybe 60, with camera crews lining the walls and county officials filling the front row like jurors. The air was thick with old coffee, worn-out carpet, and anxious sweat. Victoria stood at the podium like a general addressing troops before a fight. Her slideshow was titled, "Protecting Our Community, the Marcus Brennan Threat Assessment." She dressed like she was delivering a keynote. Flawless suit, perfect hair, voice projected like a Broadway lead. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, clicking to a photo of my cabin, "we are here to address the imminent danger that Marcus Brennan poses to our peaceful neighborhood." I sat quietly in the back row, wearing my cleanest work shirt and holding a leather folder that contained enough legal firepower to flatten mountains. Sarah was beside me, occasionally checking her phone for real-time updates from federal investigators. Digging through Victoria's financial misdeeds, Victoria's presentation was a masterclass in manipulation. She displayed images of my construction project, twisted as evidence of danger. Screenshots of my social media posts meant to help fellow contractors were shown as digital threats. Charts painted a picture of falling property values linked to so-called transient populations. "This man owes our community $97,000 in fines and legal fees," she declared, her voice righteous. "He's intimidated families, scared children, and just yesterday was under federal investigation for terrorism." The audience murmured in agreement. Good people misled by months of propaganda. "And furthermore," she continued, flipping to a financial chart, "Mr. Brennan's continued presence is putting a $50 million economic development at risk, an opportunity that could benefit every single family here." There it was, the real motive laid bare. Caught on camera, witnessed by county officials, Victoria had just admitted. This entire campaign was about pushing me off my land for a lucrative development deal. She opened the floor for public comment. 3 neighbors, clearly prepped in advance, stood up and gave tearful testimonies about how unsafe they felt because of me. It felt like bad community theater. And then she made the mistake she'd never lived down. Does anyone else have concerns about this man threatening our community? I stood up slowly, folder in hand. "I do," I said. Victoria's smile cracked. You're not part of this HOA. You have no right to speak." "Actually," I replied, walking calmly toward the front, "I think you'll find I have every right, more than anyone in this room, in fact." The crowd shifted, murmuring confusion. Victoria's complexion went pale as I stepped up to the podium. "My name is Marcus Brennan," I announced, "and I'm the sole owner of Brennan Holdings LLC. I held up Uncle Silas's incorporation paperwork for the cameras to see. That means I legally own the land beneath every home in this subdivision." The silence was total. You could have heard a pin drop. Then the chaos began. Gasps, shouting, chairs scraping as people turned to their neighbors in shock. Victoria lunged for my documents like a drowning person grasping at a life raft. "That's impossible. These homes are ours." "You own the buildings," I said, "but the land beneath them, that's belonged to my family for 27 years through my uncle's holding company." I spread the property deeds across the podium like cards on a table. "Every mortgage payment you thought went to a bank, it was actually rent sent to Brennan Holdings. Every HOA fee you've collected, Victoria, you've been stealing on land you don't even own." Sheriff Davidson stepped forward, his face dark with realization. "Double quotes, Mrs. Ashworth," he said. "You've been collecting HOA dues on land that legally belongs to Mr. Brennan." Victoria's mask finally fell apart. "You can't do this. I built this community. You're just a squatter who doesn't belong here." "Funny," I said, pulling out payment records. "Because you're 3 months behind on rent, which means I can legally evict you with 30 days' notice." The room exploded again. Victoria lunged, shouting about property rights and HOA rules until Davidson had to restrain her. "I'm not here for revenge," I said over the uproar. "I'm here with an offer. Anyone involved in the harassment has 30 days to move out. Everyone else, your rent is now half what you paid before, and we're building a real community. As federal agents entered to arrest Victoria for wire fraud, her final scream echoed down the valley. "You can't do this." To me, I am this community, but real communities aren't founded on greed and lies. They're built on truth. 3 months later, I was on my cabin porch, watching kids laugh and play in what had once been Victoria's restricted access area. When Emma showed up for the weekend, she hugged me tight, her face lit up with joy. "Dad, I got into Colorado State full scholarship." And then, you know what won them over? My essay about how you taught me that strength isn't revenge. It's rebuilding something better from broken pieces. Victoria was serving an 18-month sentence, ordered to repay $150,000 to the neighbors. She defrauded. 6 of her loyal foot soldiers quietly vanished, evicted and exposed. The remaining 41 residents fully embraced our new beginning. The air now carried the scent of barbecue from Jake's backyard, where we held our monthly potluck. Neighbors who once saw me as a threat now brought casseroles, borrowed my tools, and asked for advice on everything from fixing outlets to raising teenagers. It's amazing how fast fear vanishes when its source is gone, Sarah said, joining me and Emma on the porch with a beer in hand and a smile that said she'd help topple Goliath. What we built was beyond anything I imagined. With rents cut in half, families finally had money for home repairs, college funds, and real savings. Mrs. Peterson turned Victoria's old citation zone into a thriving community garden. Kids once told to fear me now came over asking for science project help, fascinated by the electrician who outwitted corruption using nothing but patience and paperwork. But the biggest victory was the Silas Brennan Community Justice Fund, established with the money we recovered from Victoria's scams. Now, it offered free legal help to families battling corrupt HOAs in 3 states, already exposing fraud in 17 communities. "We got a new case yesterday," Sarah said, checking her phone. "Farm family in Oregon. City council's trying to seize their land for an Amazon warehouse." Same script Victoria used. Emma looked up, her eyes gleaming with resolve. "Are we going to help them, Dad?" "We're going to try, sweetheart." Uncle Silas believed real power protects people, it doesn't exploit them. The financial resolution had been healing. Instead of profiting, I offered longtime residents a chance to buy their land at cost, no interest, through the Justice Fund. Many stayed, finally. True homeowners. The development rights Victoria promised her resort partners. I donated them to the Colorado Conservation Trust. That land will stay wild forever for Emma's kids and theirs. Property values. They didn't drop, they rose. Turns out, people will pay more to live in a place where neighbors help each other instead of Harris. As twilight painted the mountain purple, I thought about Uncle Silas. He'd kept the secret of land ownership locked away, waiting for someone who'd use it for good. Some secrets shouldn't be in weak hands, but in the right ones, they can become tools for justice. Emma sat under the porch light reading college brochures when Sarah handed me a thick envelope from Portland. "That Oregon family. They heard what we did. They're asking if the guy who crushed a corrupt HOA can help save their 100-year-old farm." I opened the envelope, breathing in the smell of hope and possibility. Another Goliath. Another shot at proving that ordinary people with grit and truth can win. "Ready to take on City Hall, old man?" Emma grinned. I smiled back, proud. "Let's do it. But this time, you're helping with the legal research." Laughter echoed across the valley where threats once rang out. Sometimes, the most powerful victory is building something so beautiful it erases every trace of the ugliness that came before. Drop a comment with your HOA horror story. You're not alone. Your experience might help someone in a similar fight. If this story helped you learn your rights, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more HOA exposes. Next week's episode: how City Council tried to steal our farm for an Amazon warehouse but forgot about great grandpa's mining rights. Thanks for watching HOA Stories. Hit like and share your thoughts below. We post wild HOA showdowns every week. Don't miss what's coming next.